Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 7th of September. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Jonny McFarlane this morning, but we're deep inside the international break. Jonny, we can see the end is in sight almost. Can't wait to get back to club football, can't we?
Oh dear. Derek, please bring it back ASAP. Whatever you're doing, can we just get back to talking about the real football? You know, proper football. International football is fine at tournaments, but geez, this is 3 games. I mean, it feels like years ago that we last had a Rangers or a Scottish Premiership game. It's pretty grim.
Yeah, the time is awful, especially after the Euros and what have you, and then you always break up just a few weeks into the campaign, and there's breaks to come, folk, as well. So we've got that to look forward to. We'll just touch on the international break, because news yesterday that came out just after we came off air, Jonny. We were waxing lyrical about Nathan Patterson. He's now out of Scotland's match against Austria. We believe it's a slight injury. It's a concern, that you would imagine, with St Johnstone coming up.
Yeah, Steve Clark said that he picked up the injury in the last game, and he just wouldn't be ready for this next game. So I think it's probably one of these ones where he's picked up a knock, he's picked up a bang of some sort around his legs or something like that, where he just is not going to be likely to be fully fit for a game 3 days later. But maybe after a week he'll be fine. But we don't know the full ins and outs of it. But just reading between the lines of what Clark said, it certainly didn't sound like a serious injury, which will be terrific news for Rangers fans, because Nathan Patterson's such a talented young player, and obviously will be an important squad player going forward. So not ideal for Scotland. We were talking yesterday about why he should be the number 1 right back and why he should have been at the Euros. And I think when you're going up against an Austria side with Stephen O'Donnell on one side, Andy Robertson on the other, you've got no real pace up top. You're wondering where that pace is coming from, and that's the one thing that Patterson does give you. He is absolutely electric. You saw that with the goal that was scored against Moldova in the last Scotland game. You know, it came about through a drive and run down the half space from Nathan Patterson, and his pace just took him away from his markers, his pace and power. So yeah, it's a big one for Scotland that they don't have him, but I suppose we'll just have to wait and see how that game goes. I suspect, for all the people saying Austria are there for the taking, that the Austrians will also think that Scotland are pretty much there for the taking as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they can take anything from Austria, it's a bonus, I think, especially going over there. But, I mean, we were talking yesterday, we've only seen him twice this season, Nathan Patterson. Rangers are going to have to try and give him more game time, because he's such an exceptional talent. Let's just hope he's okay for the weekend, although Leon Balogun put in that man of the match display against Celtic, so I don't feel too uncomfortable at him if he was to take that role. A couple of questions coming in here, Jonny. Good to have your company as always. Billy R Magician, Jack and Bakuna listed in a Europa squad. I noticed this yesterday, Jonny. Of course, now that's an interesting one, because Ryan Jack we've yet to see. We've not seen for some time now. If he can come back to the level that we know he can play, it's like the old cliche. It'll be like a new signing.
Yeah, look, Ryan Jack is the first pick midfielder on the right-hand side. Absolutely. There's no other player on that Rangers team that you'd rely on to give you the kind of discipline, the kind of, I suppose, the raw power that he provides on that side and getting up and down the pitch. Now, he's been suffering with injuries over the last season. There's no doubt about that. But if Rangers can get Ryan Jack fully fit, it is like putting a 10 million player into that side. And not just that, a 10 million pound player who knows that role intrinsically, who knows it inside out and knows exactly where he needs to be. I mean, he is just such a huge addition to that midfield. You just can't understate it. I mean, Gerrard always said that he's like his on-pitch lieutenant. He's always been a first pick for the big games. And we've seen over the past that he can even come up with a big game goal. So to get Ryan Jack back would be massive. I mean, it's been a little bit of a sort of Jordan Rossiter situation where the manager's been saying, 7 to 10 days, and it's become quite a long time of that situation where you think, yeah, he's going to be back next week or he's going to be back the week after that. And it's never quite come off. So to see him listed in this Europa League squad is obviously a massive boost. Because I think we've seen, and we'll see this with, I see Billy's talking about Bacuna being in the squad as well. We've seen it with Lundstrom. You just can't fit into that Rangers midfield. It just doesn't happen. It didn't happen with Stephen Davis. It didn't happen with Glenn Kamara. It doesn't happen with any of them. They need time to get to grips with it. Now, people might say, well, Glenn Kamara looked pretty good when he first came in. Yeah, he did, but he looked pretty good for a £50,000 sign from Dundee that nobody expected anything of.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between him and Lundstrom, who's come in as a Premier League player, who's valued at the club internally value at around 10 million, who they think they want to watch getting, who I think most people who saw him in the Premier League think this is a guy who could come up here and do really well. But everyone has to get used to that tactical framework that Rangers set up with these two left and right central midfielders having to shuttle back and cover the fullbacks. And the importance of that within the system. And the minute you switch off, Rangers get done because their fullbacks are always balling on. And Ryan Jack is the master at that. I'm really excited to see Bacuna.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy, if you look at his YouTube and his Y-Scout stats and his YouTube videos, you see a player who, in his moments of absolute clarity as a player, is a real talent. But I'm sitting here as a guy who went on a video like this back in the day talking about what Carlos Pena was going to bring to Rangers because of what I'd seen on YouTube. So I've learned the hard way, lads and ladettes, that that is not the road to pursue because YouTube can be slightly deceiving.
Yeah.
So it's up to him to come in and prove that he's got that in his locker at Rangers. And, at a club this size, he's judged on what he produces on the park, not what he's done in the past. So you'll get a blank slate and he'll be able to come in and show what he can do. And it'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah, touching on Ryan Jack, you mentioned that he's Steven Gerrard's Mr. Reliable, the go-to man. But let's be honest, Rangers have not been able to rely on him due to breaking down with injuries. This is a huge season for him, isn't it? Because they can't afford for him to play 2 or 3 games and then be out for 5 or 6 again, can they? That we just can't afford a player like that. So it's a big test for him to not only get up to speed but to stay injury-free.
Well, there's a huge onus on Ryan and there's a huge onus on Jordan Milson to make sure that Ryan has a tailored programme that gets the best out of him. I think it's quite clear at this stage. I think Ryan Jack's, is he 28, 29 now?
Yes. 28.
He's coming to an age where he's going to have to manage the problems that he has. He clearly has had some long-term problems that he's dealing with. And over time, it will be about how he and Rangers manage those problems to ensure that he is at his best. And that might mean if there's 3 games in a week, he's only playing 1.5 or 1. Or maybe he can do all 3. But he will have to manage it based on his body and listen to his body. And every player gets to that situation. Famously, you had the situation with Roy Keane, who completely changed his game. And I use Keane as an example just because it was so famous what he did at Manchester United. This box-to-box, powerful, energy-driven midfield player who just would be everywhere on the pitch. And then just suddenly, after a succession of bad injuries, he just couldn't do that anymore. And he had to adapt his game. And there might be an element of that with Ryan Jack, where he has to look at the style of footballer he is. But in Rangers' system, I think it's tailor-made for a Ryan Jack. He just might have to be careful about how many games he's played.
Yeah, Hugh gets in touch. Ryan Jack and Bacuna at full strength will move Rangers onto a different level. I'm like you, I'm looking forward to seeing Bacuna in action. I've heard sort of mixed reviews from Huddersfield Town supporters, but with all due respect to the Terriers, he's moving on to a different level with Rangers, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. That leads us on in terms of moving on to a different level. Where are Rangers placed just now, Johnny? Heading into the international break, of course, there was that Old Firm victory Rangers, with 3 wins from their opening 4 matches, sitting just behind the 2 Edinburgh clubs who have started really well. Where are Rangers' place going into? Of course, against St Johnstone at the weekend. That victory against Celtic certainly has changed the narrative, as we've touched on before, hasn't it? So how do you think that they're placed, the champions, to go on and carry out the rest of the campaign?
Yeah, it's been quite a fraught and difficult start to the season. There's no doubt about it. But ultimately, you'd have to say at this point, it's a success. There's no doubt that Champions League football would have been the number one priority, given the incredible boost that would have given to the club finances. However, Rangers just clearly weren't ready for that. You know, they lost both games against Malmo, as we know. So you just say, right, well, what can we do? And what they've been able to do is to get into the Europa League. And slowly but surely, I think, over the course of the season, we've seen steady improvement up until that Old Firm game where Rangers looked pretty much back to the team that we know they can be, in and out of possession. Gary McAllister was very clear about the importance of that out of possession element of harrying teams and showing a real strong structure. In terms of moving forward for the season, I think Rangers have talked already. Stephen Gerrard's talked about it. The need to adapt a little bit and change a little bit because teams in the Scottish Premiership will now know how Rangers operate and will have more advanced strategies on how to stop that sort of 4-3-3 that they play, or 4-3-2-1. So I think there's going to be some tactical variation you're going to see with, for example, maybe a Patterson and Tavernier playing at the same time. Bacuna might offer something completely different in terms of the way he's deployed. So I think we're going to see Rangers experimenting a little bit from a tactical point of view, and I think that's going to be fascinating for all these people who love tactics like me, Joshua, Derek, and for the rest of you, maybe not so interesting. But how that plays out will be key to Rangers' season. You know, how the Rangers adapt to changes in their shape. But you have to say the squad is in really, really good shape. There's quality all throughout it. If one of the first team players goes, if a Tavernier goes, you've got Patterson. If Barisic goes, you've got Bassey. If Ryan Jack goes, you've got Bacuna. You've got Scott Arfield. If Alfredo Morelos is injured, you've got Defoe. You've got Roof. You've got multiple options at every position. So Rangers are really, really in good shape. I mean, what do you think going into it? Do you have any concerns?
Yeah, you've mentioned a number of players there, and Rangers do have a big squad. It's about keeping players happy, I think, is a thing that Stephen Gerrard will have to negotiate. I'm like many. I would love to see Nathan Patterson more. I don't know how he fits him and Tavernier in the same team. I know we've seen it for 10 minutes in that friendly against, was it Real Madrid? But in the main, that there has to be a way. They're exceptional talents, and we have to see Nathan Patterson more. For me, I think we just seen it in the Moldova game with Scotland. He's just one of those explosive players, isn't he? That gets you on the edge of your seat. He's an exceptional talent. So I think that is going to be something that the coaching team will have to try and look in the coming games, that's for sure. But in terms of the tactical variations, you're right. There's so many options. We, of course, done there's 2 Rangers sides earlier on. I think I done the piece on the Rangers review site just to show the strength and depth. Of course, like you say, the Champions League was a massive disappointment, but the Europa League campaign is their level, I think, and it'll be about progressing from that group stage. And we touched on Ryan Jack and Bacuna. If they get them back to some sort of, well, Bacuna has not played for a while, so he and Jack, if they can get them to a match fit stage, then it'll be 2 good additions as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he sort of adapts the team going forward for the different games. Of course, it'll be the Thursday, Sundays we're used to for the last couple of seasons as well. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, aren't there, for different players to get a chance to play either domestically or in Europe. Johnny, don't you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's going to be utilisation of that squad. There's no doubt about it. And what they've done quite cleverly, although they didn't make that big headline sale. Listen, we've been critical of the fact that they said they would do it and they haven't done it. We know that there's market issues around that. You know, COVID has really affected what clubs have to spend. But they've cleverly clipped back on a lot of the squad players. We've seen Jordan Jones go out the door. We've seen myriad players, Cedric Itten, for example, just depart and allow that sort of tight squad that Rangers need, in terms of not a tight squad. Obviously, they've got a big squad, but a tighter squad than they had. It was a bit unwieldy, and they managed to get a lot of those players out on loan or on permanent deals. Nikola Katic is another one, and that'll stand them in good stead in terms of keeping everyone happy, because there's less fat on that squad. It's been trimmed, so I think that's a key point going forward. There's still the odd player that you think, like Brandon Barker will give a big role to play, for example. But
and he was linked actually with a move down to Bolton, but it never came of anything. But I don't see him getting any game time whatsoever. I think for his own career, it would be best if some sort of agreement was reached that he would head out the door, I think.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Brandon Barker is that Gerrard's occasionally used him quite surprisingly. He's used him in big games because he's a ball carrier and he's electric in terms of pace. So in certain games, you can see like Brandon Barker being a specialist, but it's very difficult given that he's hardly played in pre-season. He's not played in the games to just drop Brandon Barker in a Europa League game or a Celtic game now going forward. I think that would be an odd one. But that said, remember, Walter Smith used to be master of that. I always remember a season when DeMarcus Beasley appeared out of nowhere in September, having played in no games. And I can't remember this season, maybe 2007 or 2008. I can't remember exactly which season it was. DeMarcus Beasley turned up out of nowhere and was the fulcrum of Rangers for about 6 weeks and then disappeared again.
Yeah.
So these things can happen. I know DeMarcus Beasley's a different level of talent as a player to Brandon Barker, obviously. But that still did happen. So it's always good to have options for a manager, and Steven Gerrard certainly has options.
Yeah, he certainly does. We'll leave it there. Folks, thanks again for your company this morning. Remember to subscribe to the Rangers Review now for just £2.99 a month, and subscribe to top quality journalism covering the team you love. Keep your eye on the website. A whole load of great content on there, and also on our social media accounts as well on Twitter and Facebook. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.